Right. So welcome everybody. And so today we're talking about stress reduction in the time of COVID. It's a play on words for love in the time of cholera. I think most people got that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, stress and anxiety reduction is a useful theme kind of anytime throughout the year. So I have a private practice. I'll talk about that later. But what a lot of people come in for is stress and anxiety reduction. It's actually, and this sounds weird, but it's one of my favorite things to work with because, you know, it can make a big difference in somebody's life. You know, for somebody who has, you know, ongoing negative thoughts or makes yucky images in their mind about some future event, you know, it can really get in the way of leading a, you know, a full and happy life. And so just in general, that's a, you know, it's a great thing to work on. And then on top of it, you know, we live in interesting times. So, you know, I don't have to say, you know, what's going on. Everybody, you know, knows we're all stuck at home. And so it can create an extra layer of stress on top of all of the stuff that's going on. So, you know, that's kind of why we're here. And, you know, what I'm going to cover today is I'm going to give some background that'll help kind of maybe get some distance from, you know, what's going on. And then I'll offer some tools and then, you know, give you some experiences of things that you can actually use during what we're doing today. And you both will have, and anybody else who joins will have an opportunity to, you know, to use the tools while we're here and then to interact. You know, I always like to say, okay, try the tool and then give me the feedback on how it worked and then we can tweak it. So, you know, that's an opportunity for you guys. Now, that said, so I have a great story. So I took chemistry in high school and a great teacher, loved him. But he started the class in a very funny way. He said, okay, you know, welcome to Chemistry 1. And who here knows what chemistry is? And nobody raised their hand. He's like, come on, tell me what, you know, give me some ideas, anybody. Just, you know, people started throwing things out. And nobody really got it right. And before, you know, even anybody spoke up, he said, you all signed up for a class, you didn't know what it was about. And he said, and I still remember it to this day, he said, chemistry is a study of matter and its changes. So now that you know why you're here. So what is stress and what is anxiety? Now, these are labels, right? And so part of what a psychologist's job is, and I don't know if either of you are psychologists, so my apologies in advance if I oversimplify, but part of what a psychologist does is they diagnose and treat mental diseases and disorders, right? I don't do that. I'm not a licensed psychologist. I am a hypnotherapist, and I use other tools like mindfulness and NLP. I'll talk about what those are if you're not familiar with them. But, you know, their job is to kind of say, you know, based on what you're presenting with, this is your diagnosis, this is sort of your label. My job is often to peel that label off and say, you know, if you're feeling stress, what's actually going on in your mind? If you're feeling anxiety, what's often going on in your mind? So anxiety is, in my opinion, it's the structure of it is that somebody is making an image in their mind. Often it's an image. It could be some self-talk around it, but it's about some future event. And it's not a happy one, not a positive one. It's usually a negative one.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, I had a client who, this is probably about 5 years ago. She came in and she said, every time I go into a big box store, I have a panic attack. I'm like, oh, that's really interesting. My first question is always, how do you do that? Right? So how does somebody do that in their mind? But I said, you know, probably what you're doing is you're making a big picture in your mind of something bad happening. And when she said it, I already knew in advance what was going on. She said, oh yeah, when I go in, I have a panic attack. She was kind of, you know, leaning back. And what I could tell was that where her hands were was how close the picture was of something bad happening to her. And I said, yeah, I'll bet you're making that bad picture in your mind, right? It's right there, right? I pointed. She said, yeah, how did you know? Well, you know, gestures are sometimes metaphorical and sometimes very literal. And what she reported was that when she went into a big box store, she imagined somebody attacking her. About you, but if I imagine that, of course I would have a panic attack too, right? There's a structure of what everybody does in their mind that causes anxiety. So when I work with somebody one-on-one, it's let's find out what exactly it is you're doing in your mind. It's some kind of program that you're running, and that program creates the problem, creates the challenge, right? Stress, there's probably more definitions of stress, but when I think of stress, it's more like there's something, you know, something coming down on me, something being put on me. There's some kind of constraint due to time or resources or something like that. And I see that as a little more, sometimes clients report it as external, right? You know, my boss is a jerk, right? That causes stress, right?
Right.
What I have to say is I can't change your boss. I can only change you, right? You're the person sitting in your chair. You're welcome to bring your boss in, right? But with stress, there's some kind of stimulus and you're having some kind of response. So we want to change the response that you have to the stimulus. So the stress is kind of more like the outside thing. And as I like to say, orange juice always comes out of an orange. When you put an orange under pressure and you squeeze it, grapefruit juice doesn't come out, milk doesn't come out, orange juice comes out. So these stressors often will bring up limiting beliefs, limiting thought patterns, things like that. When anybody sets a big goal in life, it often creates some form of stress for them because it is something that's outside of their current capability. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a goal. It'd be something you already have, right?
Mm-hmm.
They want a promotion. They want a better job. They want to lose 20 pounds. They want to move through the world in a more relaxed and easy fashion. So all of this comes down to the programming that's in our mind. So the way we think about things that happen are positive beliefs or empowering beliefs and our limiting beliefs. And I'll talk more about what those are later, and then internal conflicts. So almost everybody who comes in for something like smoking or weight loss or something like that has some kind of internal conflict. And the reason I know that is that if somebody, let's just use smoking, for example, if somebody really doesn't want to quit smoking, they're never going to come in and see me because no problem. And I don't have any judgment on it. Smoke all you want, right? Probably not good for you, but you know that, right?
Right.
Somebody who absolutely wants to quit smoking, they're 100% congruent, not only just mentally, but all of them is committed. It's actually really easy behaviorally, and I'm not minimizing what somebody goes through to quit smoking, but behaviorally, it's actually the easiest habit to break. Just don't pick up the next one. Those people never come in and see me either because they realize, wait a minute, I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the people who quit cold turkey and they're done, and that's that. So it's the people that are in between that, yeah, that's it, I'm quitting smoking. Oh man, I had such a hard day. You know, one more.
Yeah.
Right? Same thing for weight loss, right? That's it, I'm doing it. You know, I got to lose that 20 pounds, but oh man,
I really need that. Yeah, cookie.
Yep. I had such a hard day and that chocolate's just going to taste so good, right? So sometimes there's less of that going on with stress, but what happens is there's a deeper need for our stress response. One of the things I like to remind people is to take on this frame that behind every behavior in yourself or anybody else, there is some positive intention. Now, that can be challenged, and like all beliefs, this one is not true, and I'll talk about beliefs more later. But this is a useful belief to take on because whether it's some behavior inside yourself or some behavior that's happening in somebody else, if you take on this frame or this mindset that there is a positive intention behind it, then you can look for the deeper need that's trying to get met. So somebody who's having an anxiety response is often trying to, you know, it's some kind of communication from the unconscious mind that says, pay attention, right? Try to work out all the possible things that could go wrong. And if you can do that, then you can finally feel safe and relaxed or feel at peace or something like that. But people say, wait a minute, you know, but I'm not feeling peace. Well, that's the thing. That's why we call it a limiting belief, because it creates limitations that often prevent people from getting that deeper need met, right? And again, often for anxiety, and it could be anything for anyone, but it's often things like, you know, when I can figure all this stuff out or this all goes away, I can feel some sense of peace, some sense of safety, some sense of security, something like that. So by the nodding, yeah, it makes sense, right?
Yes.
So one of the things we'll look at is, what are those deeper needs, right? So this is all stuff that are sort of these, I'm building building blocks here. That's why I'm talking a lot, right? So an important principle to keep in mind here. So the first one is, stress and anxiety it's a program that runs in your mind. Think of it kind of like a computer program that has kind of gone haywire a little bit. It started with good intentions, but maybe on the latest update, like with Zoom, right? That it just kind of went, it went off and, in a wrong direction. And that's why people begin to feel upside down, right?
Yes.
And so there's a structure to everything that we do, and we will dig into that a little bit later, but that's the first principle. The second principle, which I'm going to introduce, is that it's not what happens to you in your life that makes the difference. It's the meaning you attach to what happens. So when somebody presents with some kind of issue and we get to a limiting belief, I say, well, so for example, like I've worked with a lot of people recently in the last 6 months who created limiting beliefs when they were younger. They made decisions about what things meant. In other words, in their childhood, based on changing schools, right? I think we've all gone through changing schools. And so, a common one that comes up is I changed schools and, it was the middle of the year and I couldn't make any friends. And so that means I'm not likable, right? So notice this is a belief as a cause and effect. Changing schools, nobody's interacting with me, at least in the way I want, means I'm not likable, right? And logically, that can make sense, right? And when we're young, we make the best sense out of things that we can. That's the meaning that was attached to that. Now, there's some other kid who could be like, changing schools, nobody knows me, nobody's interacted with me yet, fresh start.
Right.
Right? Now I'm gonna get the cool clothes and I'm gonna be like the cool kid now, right? Notice the same event, different interpretation. So it's not what happens, it's the meaning you attach to what happens. And so let's apply that to today, right? So today, there have been changes in the world. I'll just put it that way, right? Because I'm going to state it generically because what does it mean, right? Why is it causing anxiety, right? Some people can think that, oh my God, we're all going to get sick and die, or we're all going to lose our jobs, or life's never going to go back to the way it was, or, I don't even know what to make of it, but, I'm just feeling anxious and I don't even know why, right? Or it means I'm not safe, right? For other people, it could mean it's time to hunker down and spend some good quality time with my family. It's time for me to take on some of those projects that I've never been able to do. Because this is happening, it's a chance for me to contribute in a greater way, right? Notice those same event, all different interpretations. So let's interact on this a little bit because let's start to change some of that meaning. So either Lou or Stephanie, just kind of, give me a sense of what does it mean that this is going on?
You want to go first or do you want me to go?
You can go.
Okay. So I loved your description of the meaning behind it. The same event, two different interpretations of the meaning, because that's kind of what I'm going through right now. And sometimes it shifts from one to the other in the same day. And sometimes I could be in one aspect for a couple of days and then there'll be several days of the other. And I'm just bouncing all over the place where I'm trying to tell myself the positive thoughts of, well, in order for me to get through this, I can do something to give back. And so I found an organization where I can do something from home, which is knitting. And I'm giving back by making these things for people that need it, homeless and seniors. And it's making me feel really, really good. But then there's that other part of me that is still trying to fight those negative words, to get up, to have the desire to do anything, take a shower, brush my hair, brush my teeth, get dressed, just the normal mundane things I can't even get accomplished because I'm so anxious and down in the dumps about stuff. And so I kind of huddle in my room, and then when I leave my room, I'm like elated. There's my grandson, and we laugh and we play and we have so much fun, and he's just like, he doesn't know what's going on, and he doesn't have a negative bone in his body, you know. And so I feed off of that. So I'm all over the place, and I'm not sure, you know, how to get out of the doldrums and stay in that place where I'm happy.
Okay. So I'm going to point out a couple of things here. One is that the conflict is apparent, right? You know, and the way conflicts show up for people is often sequentially. So this is the structure, by the way, and I'm just going to do this little tangent just to explain that this is really common for people, right? It's yo-yo dieting, right?
Yeah.
Right? You know, that's it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to lose the weight. I'm going to throw away all the crap in my pantry. I'm going to have a kale shake for breakfast tomorrow. So let me lay out the kale and get the blender out. Tomorrow morning comes along, kale shake. Doesn't taste so good, but that's it. I'm losing the weight. Drink the kale shake. You know, go out for a run. Haven't run in 20 years. Knees hurt, lungs hurt. You know, that's it. I'm doing it. Leftover kale shake for lunch. Dinner time. Let's, you know, have a salad. Next morning, weigh in, lost a pound. Okay, let's do it. More kale shake, more kale shake. This goes on for a few days. The pendulum's here. You're riding high, but oh man, my body is sore. I'm achy. I'm probably not getting enough nutrition. I'm cranky. I've been good. Let me just have a little bowl of ice cream.
Right.
Pendulum swings the other side, and that bowl of ice cream turns into the carton, and the diet's crashed out of. Right? A few days, a few weeks later, you know, back into it, more kale shakes, right? And that goes back and forth. So I pointed out using something else because often people can relate to something like that, right? Same thing for people that quit and start smoking again numerous times, right? So one of the ways out of this, and I'll give you some tools in a moment, but just to recognize there is part of you that is just doing okay with it, and part of you is struggling with it. And the part of it struggling it, I said before, behind every behavior is a positive intention. So before we go further, which side are you in now, just so I know? Right?
This hour, I'm in the good mood.
Good mood.
I'm in the positive side and hopeful. And it's things like when I find things like this that I go, oh, okay, well, let me see what I can do. You know, it's like I've helped try and help people online with anxiety before this all came about. And I try and use the analogy like on the airplane. I have to put my oxygen mask on first before I can help anybody else. And so I was like, well, how can I help other people if I'm not, you know, taking care of myself? So I'm in taking care of myself mode right now.
Okay. Yeah. So what would you say your anxiety level is 0 to 10, just sitting here now?
All right. Right now, I'm, oh God, it's a roller coaster ride, and it fluctuates constantly over the course of the day. I don't even know how to explain it. And it's like, I know what my anxiety triggers are before all of this, but this is so different. And I also, because I have all the friends and family that are also coming with their concerns and their anxiety. And so I kind of feel like I've taken all of it on.
Okay. So there's a couple things we can do here. So let me give you a couple processes, a couple of tools here. And Stephanie, you can follow along with these if they make sense, and then we'll come to you next and we'll work on your specific situation. Remember, I said before, it's not what happens, it's the meaning you attach to it. So in this side of the conflict, and I'm just arbitrarily choosing sides, but in the sort of, healthy response to it, or the positive response to it, it's, how can I help others, right? When it's on the other side, there's some meaning you're making to it. What, like, if you kind of just put yourself back in the dumps for just a moment and connect with that part of you, what are you making it mean, and what's going on in your mind when you're kind of on that down side?
That I'm not worthy, that I'm not enough.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, those are big ones, by the way. When we talk about limiting beliefs, those are some very core beliefs, right? So if this is a private session, we've just gone right.
Yeah, I'll call you.
Well, and let's work to change it here, right? I mean, feel free to call me, but we may be able to do some important shift here, right?
Right.
So what is the positive intention behind feeling not good enough or not worthy?
There's a positive behind that.
Yeah. Remember I said behind every behavior is a positive
I
intention.
know. I can't even fathom what it could be. I mean, I have these negative thoughts, and I lay in bed and I'll think these things, and then I'll say something like, "Stop it! You're being stupid." I'm like, "No, don't say that. You never call anybody stupid." Yeah,
That's the conflict.
yeah, I'm always
This goes
arguing.
on in most people, so it's all right. Now, this is something where we'll probably do some deeper work, but again, let's see what we can do in a few minutes here. Now, often for people, when they have this kind of, so it's usually the result of something that happened, and it could be very traumatic, it could be very innocuous, right?
Right.
I've run across this belief with something as simple as just changing schools, and it's not like people are freezing you out on the first day, it's just they don't know you and they've got their friends, they're happy to see you.
Right.
But often what this comes down to is, the positive intention is something like, well, I want to be a good person, right? Because I did something wrong when I was younger that, again, could have been very major, very minor, and I got disciplined for it. And so because of that, I felt like I was unworthy, right? I did something wrong, so I'm wrong.
I remember now what it is. Because I've had this conversation many times, and that is because I've never felt believed. I always feel like people think I'm lying, and I'm not a liar. And so when somebody shuts me out because they think I'm lying, that's the underlying cause of all of this for me.
Okay. So somebody thinks you're lying and they shut you out, and then what do you think they are trying to get for themselves if somebody shuts you out? Because again, positive intentions count for other people too.
They're protecting themselves from their own past experiences. They're projecting their past experiences on me to protect themselves, and I know that. I know that, but it's like the head and the heart they're just not communicating.
Yeah, well, let's bring those together, right? So if somebody else can protect themselves, what would they get for themselves that's even more important?
I don't know.
So imagine a representative person who is protecting him or herself. Because often, like if I try it on, like if I can really protect myself from somebody who's lying, that helps me feel safe.
Oh, right.
That's my version of it. But think of somebody else who, protected themselves from just the suspicion of your lying, right? What do you think that gets for them?
They lose out on a great person, that's for sure. All right, that's the positive side.
But,
Um,
but I mean, emotionally, like if somebody else, thinks that a person is lying, they protect themselves, what do they get? Again, it might be something like safety, security.
right. But I don't think that I don't think that it's doing them any good by not taking a leap of faith when life is so short and can be
Right.
taken away such.
We're not condoning the behavior.
No,
Look at a person's
no.
behavior from the intention. Just look at purely at their intention from the self.
Okay.
Even for a moment that it's about you.
You're right. Okay.
Yeah. So if you forget just for a moment it's about you and you just take on this idea that they're just trying to get something from the self, what's the deeper need that gets met when they can protect themselves?
I'm missing this. I'm missing out on where you're leading.
Okay. So what I'm really inviting you to see is that a person's behavior towards you and their intention are two very different things. Their behavior towards you may be very negative and may have lots of negative consequences, but
Right.
their intention is pure. The intention from the self is pure. Again, I think we could step in and just say, hey, protection's a good thing, right?
Right.
That probably leads to something like safety.
Right.
That's a good thing,
Yes.
right? So just see that if somebody else is accusing you of something and it's not about you, separate out the behavior from the intention and just say, oh, that person's just trying to feel safe. I can appreciate that.
Yeah. I had a friend say something to me about it, and I said, well, you know, uh, that person did what they felt was best for them at that time. And I didn't like the decision, and I didn't like the way it was handled, but that doesn't mean that that person was wrong. They did what
Yeah.
was best for them. And that has been the only thing that has been really helping me get through that part of it. And then realizing that that's what it was, I started feeling better about my life and things. Um, and then all of this happened, and it just sort of like being stuck with myself, so to speak, it brought up a lot of that anxiety all over again.
Yeah. Okay. So when you kind of thought about that situation and that person differently, what emotion would you associate with that?
Oh,
Be something like acceptance or compassion or trust or whatever.
yes. We've talked about, the person and I talked about this, and it was like, you know, talking about forgiveness and having to forgive somebody for something that they hurt you on, but um, it's not about, like you said, it's not condoning the behavior. It's not um, saying that that behavior was okay and that I will tolerate it. It just says that, all right, the person did what he had to do because of that was the best decision for him at the time.
Yep.
Um, and I have to accept it. And that's part of what forgiveness is accepting that something happened. Um, I don't have to like it.
Yep.
And then once you can accept it, then it's a lot easier to move forward. It's just trying to get through that part of the journey of the pain behind it all, and realize there is a silver lining. It's just, I don't see it right now.
Okay. Well, that might be, too many leaps of faith, but let's start with something real simple. I'm going to give you a tool that, and Stephanie, you can do follow along with this as well. There's something called anchoring. Anchoring is creating a Pavlovian response within yourself.
A what response?
Pavlovian. So
Okay, Pavlovian. Okay.
yeah, so just for the people who are maybe listening to this later, Ivan Pavlov did experiments with digestion in dogs,
And the bell.
and he rang the bell.
Yes. Okay.
The dogs would associate the sound of the bell with the smell of the food, and they would salivate. Pretty soon, so he'd ring the bell when he'd feed them, they'd salivate. Pretty soon, all he had to do was ring the bell. He wouldn't have to even bring the food, the dogs would salivate. So it creates a neuroassociation in your mind, okay? So we're going to create a neuroassociation with the sense of acceptance, and I'm going to use the word trust. You can use something, you know, whatever word works for you. But it is really this taking on emotionally, and I'll guide you there in a moment, but take on this idea that, you know, I can just accept things the way they are. I can trust in life. And so I'll invite you to remember a time when you felt a sense of acceptance and trust. And it could be any time, doesn't have to be related to any of the people you talked about. Could be related to a family member, a child, a grandchild, any time where you just, you know, you really felt that deep sense of acceptance, and just nod when you have that.
Yes.
Where do you feel the feeling in your body?
Oh God. I'll straight across my chest, I get this warmth.
Yeah. So feeling that warmth, you just put your hand there as a reminder. And while you're feeling this feeling, I want you to see whatever it is that you're seeing around today's situation that has been causing you the stress, but see it like you're watching it on a movie screen, clear across the room, while feeling this feeling. So you can kind of see Lou over there and see her feeling this trust. And what's that like when you imagine seeing it over there and sending the sense of trust, the sense of acceptance into her situation as you watch her over there? That's the her of today that's maybe been struggling, but when you send this trust over to her, that, you know, those thoughts start to subside, the feeling of trust, the warmth just floods her entire body. Can you see that happening now?
Yes.
Now step in and imagine that you are that, and feel the feeling and apply it to the situation today, and see it in a new way, hear it in a new way, feel it in a new way, feel this warmth, and recognize that all you've been wanting is probably some sort of protection and safety. And that with trust, that the protection and safety comes from the inside, trusting yourself that you can handle whatever happens. Because you've been through a lot already, and this too shall pass. And as you continue to feel this feeling of warmth, and trust, and protection, you can just, again, push those things that you had imagined that were going to happen that were bad, just push them away. Allow them to move away from you as you stay connected to the truth of what's inside of you. Know that you have all the resources you need within you to handle any situation. And yes, this is an opportunity for contribution. There's also an opportunity for your own personal growth. Because as I said before, you know, when you have a goal or you have something that you're striving for that you don't have yet, it is an opportunity for growth. And so I'm curious what's happening now, having done that little video.
Just a flood of emotions came out. Because I know you're right. I know this too shall pass. I've lived through worse. I survived. You were talking earlier about labels, and yeah, people put labels on others. And I think it's just society's way of coping with how to address people. And it's like, we don't need a label. Like, for example, I was a victim of a crime. I'm not a victim. I was a victim of a crime of that in that moment, in that time period, and that's not who I am anymore.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean I'm still a victim, but um, I still have things to emotional attachment to what happened, and that what happened has made me stronger. So it is impacting who I am today. It took me decades to accept what happened, but I finally had my arms around it. But it's still, when I have anxiety about something, I know that it's a knee-jerk reaction, and a lot of times because of what happened. Am I going to get the same reaction? Am I going to, it's almost a defense mechanism to prevent something else from happening again. And yet all it's doing is hurting myself. And I'm trying to come to grips with that and figure out a way to stop it. So I'm starting to recognize what my triggers are, and I have my family as well to help with that, because talking with them about it and finally bringing it up to them, now they can sit there and say, um, you know, are you having a panic attack, as opposed to saying, oh, it's all in your head, you know, that doesn't help.
Yeah.
But I know I'm going to get through this, and especially with, you know, like the words you just shared made a huge difference in reminding me that I needed to be reminded of that, you know. We
Yeah.
all have it in us. We all have the courage in us to do it. It's just sometimes, especially at times like now when we're isolated from others, um, it can be difficult to remember. So thank you for having this and having taken the time to talk with me about it.
Sure. And, you know, just recognize that the stronger person you are today is a result of the work that you've done since that thing happened.
Yes.
And the stronger person that you'll be tomorrow is a result of the work that you're doing today.
Oh, yes, yes, beautiful.
So this is the opportunity for you to grow even more. And I would invite you to do this as a little exercise, you know. Do it as I don't know if you have a meditation practice, but, you know, I often remind people, you know, meditate because it will help you deal with things like anxiety, right? But the time to start meditating is not when you're in the middle of an anxiety attack.
No.
You need to build that muscle first.
Right.
And so this is something that I would suggest you do, is connect with that feeling of trust and acceptance, and imagine all those things that you might be worried about happening, see them outside yourself. And it's really important to see them like you're watching them on TV across the room. I'll give you guys a better sense of this tool, but it puts it outside yourself, right? So imagine you're watching yourself on a TV screen or a movie screen, and feel this feeling first, so that you can, what we're doing is we're creating a new link, right? The old link was, you know, this is happening and it means something yucky. What we're saying now is, I have the trust and faith in myself and the universe and life and whatever, that when I see that stuff happening, I'm going to be okay. I'm going to get through this. I'm going to survive. Take some nice deep breaths. But do this as a little practice to connect with that feeling, and you're building that muscle of that trust and that acceptance.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
I'll leave that as a practice for you. So thanks for playing. We may come back to you, but I want to give Stephanie
Yes.
a chance here to interact and give you some tools. So, so Stephanie, first of all, were you able to kind of play along in your own way with that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And tell me what transpired.
So I feel like the ways that I've been feeling are kind of similar, but not, not the same, because everyone is different. So I was able to walk through that exercise as well. And it just brought me kind of a sense of calm. It was a bit meditative for me. And I think that my personal situation is kind of like, I'm trying to practice gratitude daily, because I understand that I'm in a great place right now. I'm pretty stable, like things are good, but at the same time, kind of feeling guilt for not doing more to help others whose situations aren't as stable. So that exercise kind of brought back kind of that feeling of gratitude and stability for me, that I'm trying to keep anchored to. But it's tough to hold on to.
Okay. Well, recognize what I'm hearing from you is there's also a conflict. You know, I'm doing pretty well. I'm pretty stable. You know, and I'm doing better than maybe some people are. So I shouldn't be feeling this way. Is that somewhat accurate?
Yeah, a bit.
Okay. Because you said earlier, if you don't mind my resharing it, I'm not sure how I'm supposed to feel. And, what I like to remind people when they fight themselves is you're going to feel whatever you're going to feel.
Yeah.
Right. And recognize, again, there's a positive intention behind the part of you that, has these anxieties and worries. right? And again, often it's things like safety or security or something like that. It could be something else, right? It's unique for each person.
Mhm.
But let me give you a slightly different tool, and I think this can be useful for Lou as well. This is one of my favorite tools to just kind of change how you feel about something in the moment, right? Now, recognizing that, I don't want to reinforce the conflict that's within you, and the way out of the conflict is to recognize that positive intention, right?
Mhm.
So part of me is feeling this way, and that's good because I recognize I have gratitude because I'm doing better than other people are. But I shouldn't be feeling this way because, there is problems going on in the world and, whatever it is, but there's an intention here that is just, whatever it is, right? And when you look at the intentions, the conflict tends to disappear. So, but for immediate relief, what are you noticing that's causing the anxiety? Is it something you see in your mind? Is it something you hear? Or is it something you feel? Probably be most aware of the feeling, but tell me what's going on in your mind.
So what kind of causes the most anxiety for me, and the things that have been sneaking into my subconscious and in my dreams are the things I hear from people that I really care about. And my interpretation of that as, a disregard for their own safety. Um,
Okay.
People who, aren't heeding the warnings that I feel that they should be warning. And so I feel this intense need to protect them um, from themselves more than anything.
Okay. And so you're aware of so this is sort of the stress, this is the outside trigger. But what do you, and this is often what I'm helping you do is expose what's in your unconscious mind into the conscious mind.
Mhm.
So often it shows up as something you see in your mind, an image or a movie, or something you say to yourself. So when somebody does something silly like, here, let me just, what goes on inside your mind? What do you see and hear that causes the anxiety?
Typically, I kind of visualize, 2, 3, 4 steps down the road. I dive into what if scenarios in my head, and kind of jump down the worst conclusions naturally.
Okay. So recognize there's a positive intention behind that. What is the positive intention for going down that road?
To prevent it from happening.
Yeah.
If there's a way I can take action that I can control to help prevent that from happening, that's
Yeah.
my inclination.
Yeah. So I'll give you guys both another useful principle here. And again, all beliefs is not true, but this one is also useful. And that is every behavior is useful in some context. So I don't know what you do for work, Stephanie, but I know a lot of engineers. And when people write code, there are people that write the code and there's people who do the quality assurance on the code to make sure that the code is good before they ship it off to be used in something.
Mm-hmm.
And I know people that work for, all sorts of safety critical industries where, if Zoom pushes out an update that breaks something, which by the way, Zoom's latest update broke something for me, but I can work around it. Right? it broke my integration with Google Calendar, and so I now have to copy and paste, right? No one gets hurt, right? Inconvenient. I used to work in the railroad industry, and if our software didn't work, trains smashed into each other at 125 miles an hour and people died. So we had to be very careful to check all of our software. So when you're in the creative part and you're writing the code, that's the time to let your creativity flow free. And then there's the time to check it and make sure that it all works well. So what you're doing makes a lot of sense, but then you have to kind of turn it off, right?
Uh-huh.
To say, okay, I've played that out. Now what am I going to do with it? Right?
Uh-huh.
Recognizing I just want to prevent it. Okay.
Yeah.
So it is useful if you're trying to, it's like if you have a 2-year-old and you leave your door unlocked, you might want to imagine that your 2-year-old can throw the door open and go running out in the street like my friend's kid did once. Fortunately, lived on a cul-de-sac. I was there when this happened. The kid was fast, just boom, right out the door, right? But once you've play that scenario out, okay, what am I gonna do about that? Do I put in a child gate? Do I put in, do I move the doorknob up? What am I gonna do about it? And when you've taken some kind of action that can help, assuming that's within your control, and you take some kind of action that can help you to alleviate that movie. But let me give you some tools. So by the way, just what's your response to what I said? Is that something that you can find helpful?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me.
Okay. Now, I'll have you see it differently because I'm guessing that you're seeing it through your own eyes.
Yeah.
So just notice what your level of anxiety is when you see it through your own eyes. 0 to 10, what's the level of anxiety? I think I could speak. What's your level of anxiety now when you think about it the way you're thinking about it?
When I play through things like that, I'd say my level of anxiety is probably at least an 8 or a 9.
Okay, yeah, makes sense, right? I think any reasonable person would have that level of anxiety. If anybody, if I wanted to install anxiety, I would say, guess what? Pick 3 people who are the most important to you in your life, and then I want you to make a movie in your mind as if you're seeing it through your own eyes of bad things happening to them.
Yeah.
You'd have anxiety, right?
Mm-hmm.
So positively intended, you're not doing anything wrong, but you're not, it's not necessarily helping to see it and run it in that same way. So let me give you an alternative,
Mm-hmm.
which is imagine you're watching it. I don't know what kind of room you're in, but imagine you can look across the room and see a very small TV set.
Okay.
And on that TV set, small and black and white, run that same movie. And notice what happens when you actually watch it. You actually watch Stephanie thinking of that over there. And you might see her face gets a little strained because she's got some anxiety, but you're just over here as an observer watching her. And what happens?
It adds a lot of distance. It makes it less personal.
Yeah.
It alleviates a lot of that personal involvement in it.
Yeah. Now you can still, this gives you the most distance because you're sort of watching yourself and you can't really see the content. But if you play the content like you're watching it on TV, it might increase the level of anxiety, but it'll still give you the information you need.
Yeah.
And so on a scale of 0 to 10, what's it like when you watch those bad things happening, but over there?
Probably more like a 3 or a 4.
Okay, so it's gone from an 8 or 9 to a 3 or a 4. And notice how quickly that can happen.
Yeah.
Right? So this is kind of the owner's manual of the brain. This is how you use your brain better. We could do the same thing with self-talk, but we're running out of time. But I'll invite you, both of you, to use this, right? So if there's yucky thoughts, often we're just so stuck in them, we're not aware we're having them. And here's a little clue, by the way, and I use this all the time. If I'm feeling something yucky, I'm like, what am I doing in my mind? I'm like, oh, that's the movie I'm making, or that's the self-talk that I have going on. Okay. Let me put that over there. Let me.
Personal social distancing.
Yes.
Right? We have to separate ourselves from that and look at it from a bigger, more overview, and then that will help alleviate the anxiety.
Yep.
Right? That's what you're saying, right?
Yeah, it's basically getting the thought out of your head and putting it someplace where you can see it and you still get the information, but you're not stuck in it.
Okay, so that leads me to a question because for my positive mental attitude, I'm really big on hope. And part of that hope for me is, for lack of a better term, daydreaming. So even like when I'm laid down to go to sleep at night, I have to go through the process of, okay, relax your shoulder. Sometimes I realize I'm smiling and I'm all like, so all my jaw and everything are tense. I have to relax my eyes and go through the whole part. And then I think about a different outcome to that movie. I daydream about how different things would be. Now, do you think that is a negative thing to do, or is it just a coping mechanism that's acceptable?
The answer that I give might sound a little flippant, but I think it's actually a very useful answer, which is, does it work?
Yes.
Then,
it makes me feel better.
Yeah. you know, I'm the horse leader, right? I lead the horse to water, right? I don't force them to drink it. I just show you, like, sometimes I do the last exercise with people and it doesn't make a big difference and I have to use a different tool and
Right.
fine. So my mantra is, you know, if it works, use it.
Okay.
The problem is most people are stuck in thinking patterns that we learned when we were really young or we picked up from other people that don't serve us. So that's really all I'm doing by giving you guys different perspectives on things, different ways to thinking about things, different ways to interpret things. So if that works, keep doing it.
Okay.
Yeah. So let me talk a little bit about the tools I use and then we can wrap it up because this will just tie it all together. So I run the Silicon Valley Hypnosis Center. So hypnosis is obviously one of the tools that I use. Hypnosis is the ability for us to give a client suggestions that can go into their unconscious mind, because we all have this part of ourself that as adults, we can critically think about things, right? So if you tell a 5-year-old about Santa Claus and say, guess what, there's this guy named Santa Claus, and you know, on Christmas Eve, he flies around to every single house in the world, and if you've been good, he gives you presents. He comes down the chimney, he rides a sleigh that's pulled by Rudolph. And if you tell a 5-year-old that, they're like, yay, right? Santa Claus, right? If you find an adult who had never heard of Santa Claus and you explain that to them, they'd be like, well, wait a minute. You know, there's like 7 billion people in the world. How, you know, it's like, you know, 200 milliseconds per house. How would he actually do that? And what powers Rudolph's nose? And what kind of database does he use to figure out who's been good and who isn't, right? We have that critical factor. So in hypnosis, we bypass that critical factor so that when I give somebody suggestions related to letting go of that anxiety, replacing it with a sense of peace and calm, that stuff can go in, right? The other set of tools I use is something called neurolinguistic programming. It's a big, long name, but basically you've had demonstrations of that. It's the programming of the mind that creates the problem or that creates the solution. So when I talked about at the very beginning, somebody goes into a big box store and imagines being attacked, right? That's a program for anxiety. That's a neurolinguistic program. Neurology, neuro, linguistic, the language of the mind, the pictures, sounds, feelings that we have related to a situation. And then the program is a series of steps that we take. So what I did with Stephanie is the program, as I'm associating to experience, I'm imagining these bad things happening to my loved ones. And if I change the program and say, see it over there, guess what? We changed the program, we changed the result. Our anxiety went down from 8 or 9 down to a 3 or 4 instantly, right? So you've had some experience with that. That's what I do with people. And in one-on-one sessions, we obviously go deeper. We can go a little, I don't go into a lot of content because again, I could just tell somebody whatever the yucky thing it is, put it over there, right? I don't have to know, right? But we can get into things like traumatic events and we can put them over there. We can change them in profound ways where they never affect you again. So if something, you know, limiting beliefs, traumas, we get into the deeper work to actually resolve that stuff, to neutralize it. And, you know, if you think about changing a belief that's as deep as I'm not good enough, you know, that changes a lot of things for people. It often affects their health, their finances, their relationships. A lot of things change when we can really change something deep like that for people. So, you know, if you guys are interested, I will put, I think since you guys registered, I'll just email you guys if that's okay. I'll just so you have my email address. And then really the next step is if you want to work with me, I offer a free 30-minute evaluation. And that's just to go over and set some goals about what we've been working on. And then I can tell you how much and how long and all that at that point.
Awesome.
So
That'd be great.
yeah. So I will email you guys. I'll actually just put it in the chat here too, but I'll invite you guys to both come forward and just say, you know, what's 1 or 2 little nuggets you got from what we did today.
Mm. Wow. Taking it away from right in front of my face and putting it on the TV screen, and seeing myself accepting the situation without anxiety made me, oh, I'm just feeling that warmth across my chest again right now. it brought me to an emotional state that where I felt like I had let down my wall. My wall was down and I could be vulnerable and I could be emotional and it was okay. That it's, as girls, we're taught, to know our place and don't talk back and, don't be bossy and then as adults we go into the world and I spent my life in the Navy, so I went from there, from home to that, where I wasn't allowed to be emotional, I wasn't allowed to have feelings and express them. And so having this ability to now look at things from outside of myself and be vulnerable and let that wall down, that's the biggest thing I've gotten out of today. So I know I'm getting gonna start crying again, but um it feels good, it feels refreshing, it's like it's okay. I'm perfectly imperfect and that's okay.
And notice that's sort of the opposite of the antidote of that I'm not good enough.
Yeah. Oh.
And just honor that emotion.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being vulnerable and willing to play. When I do these, I never know where we're going to go. So
Yeah.
here we are.
I feel a foot taller.
You're hanging down a little bit more, so I can see that.
Great.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for, I'm very honored to be able to help.
Thank you.
Yeah. So Stephanie, what's one nugget you'll take away from today?
Just one of several is just the kind of overarching idea that behaviors have positive intentions behind them. And just coming from a place knowing that, I think remembering that will help me kind of not jump a few steps ahead if I can just come back to that thought.
Yeah.
That, we have the best intentions.
Yeah. I've worked with people who've been through some horrendous stuff. I've worked with people who've been physically abused, sexually abused, all sorts of horrible things. And when we can get to that place where they can see the perpetrator as having a positive intention for himself or herself, sometimes it takes a while to get there, but when they get there, often things just really release. And I like to use that example because, if somebody who's had such horrible trauma done to them by people, by parents and stuff like that, that you can kind of see that when you apply that to somebody, who, again, you can really separate that behavior from that intention and maybe have some compassion for them instead of, wanting to kill them, right?
Right.
So, yeah, it depends who you talk to, but within NLP, there are 19 presuppositions, so roughly 20. That's my favorite. If they took away all the other presuppositions, that's my favorite one. I use two of them tonight. One is behind every behavior is a positive intention. And the other one is every behavior is useful in some context, right? So that's kind of the power of the work that we do, is to really kind of install these as new beliefs and really look at the world through those as filters. So yeah, great. So yeah, thank you both for showing up and
Thank you.
and for playing. And whether you decide to continue with me or whatever, do just drop me a note and just let me know how you're both doing.
All right.
I would love to hear that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is the opportunity to give something back and to serve in a greater way as well. So
Yeah.
that's the meaning I'm taking from it. So,
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
yeah, you're welcome.
Bye, Steph.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Bye.